The shuttle ride to the Interstellar Combat Conservatory of Strategic Excellence, TM, yes, that icky sex, was exactly as dignified as Commander Lila Harrow expected. Which is to say, not at all. The onboard safety pamphlet featured 3 pages on surviving psychospatial dismemberment and a recipe for something called glorp stew, which may or may not have contained sentient onions. She stepped off the ship with a scuffed duffel, a thermos labeled "World's Okayest Diplomat," and the rested glow of someone who'd done deadlifts in 1.2x gravity for fun. Her arrival went unnoticed at first. GATS had a lot of arrivals: bipedal tanks, hive swarm tacticians, even a screaming jelly cube that enrolled itself after digesting a recruitment officer. But then, Lila stepped through the atmospheric scanner. It dinged, not because of weapons, but because she'd brought an unauthorized liquid. Coffee. Triple caffeinated, thermally aggressive, and brewed from beans that Earth's own medical board had labeled mildly belligerent. An alien attendant, somewhere between a lamp and an emotional support squid, fluttered toward her and tried to confiscate it. Lila stared, just stared. The squid lamp whimpered and floated away at light jog speed. The instructors took one look at her intake forms and burst into something that could only be described as bureaucratic snickering. Earthstick number 9, they tagged her, not bothering to hide it. Unaugmented, unspecialized, under-evolved. A few instructors debated whether she'd arrived by mistake. One suggested she was a decoy sent to trigger surveillance software. Another believed she was that one weird human hobby, cosplay. But the commandant had a better idea. "Let's prank her," Wargelmet said, with the clinical confidence of a titanium-plated sloth who'd once written a dissertation on power-based humiliation rituals. Her quarters were adjusted to triple gravity, enough to pancake a Horkian. War slug. Expectation, screaming, maybe gibbering. At minimum, mild liquefaction. Reality, Lila did burpees. Not only burpees, she did them while humming "Danger Zone" and requesting a yoga mat made from star steel because, quote, the floors a bit soft. Security footage leaked. At first, other cadets assumed it was a deep fake, part of a motivational scam run by the Squadalon Resistance League. But no. There she was, doing push-ups while making eye contact with the surveillance drone, smirking between reps like gravity, owed her an apology. Half the instructors rebooted their diagnostic implants. The other half filed emotional support requests with the Bureau of Xeno-Standard Psychological Stabilization. One tried to revoke gravity privileges altogether, but was denied by the campus AI, which had already updated her performance profile with the title Gravity Troll, Elite Tier. Orientation proceeded as usual, if by usual one meant a parade of barely concealed xeno-superiority. Lila was handed a combat tablet that refused to calibrate to human fingers, a cafeteria schedule that listed meals as nutrient deliveries, and a map of the campus with all human-accessible paths. Labeled Maybe Don't, her first briefing involved a holographic presentation from drill instructor Flarnox, a creature best described as a migraine in physical form, whose vocal range caused 2 translation units to burst into flames. He screamed, boomed, and shrieked through the schedule of horrors: acid rope drills, sentient obstacle mazes, empathy reconditioning, and mandatory interspecies motivational screaming, aka group therapy with thermite. Lila took notes, in block caps, with a stylus made of solidified sarcasm. She asked if the empathy reconditioning had kettlebells. Later that evening, while cadets limped into their bunk rooms moaning about bruised egos and compromised armor seals, Lila casually jogged past them, upside down, using a ceiling-mounted pull-up bar that she had installed herself. Her bunkmate, a gelatinous trooper named Vaughn, tried to report her to maintenance. Maintenance sent back a message that simply read, "Not our department. She is maintenance now." By week's end, she'd survived 2 unintentional plasma discharge drills, a cafeteria ambush by glorp snakes, and a mandatory intro to interstellar etiquette, where she accidentally declared her boots a sovereign state. The blorb instructor panicked. She saluted. A formal alliance was declared. No one knew what to do. GAT's command briefly considered sending her home. Unfortunately, that required paperwork. Paperwork that none of them wanted to file because it meant admitting their lethal prank had failed. Worse, it had been turned into a warm-up. So they let her stay, quietly, cautiously. And when asked what Earth's purpose was in sending her, Lila just sipped her coffee, tilted her head slightly, and replied, "This is the prank." And for the first time in the history of the Galactic Hegemonic Assembly of Training Standards, the emergency gravity alarms were triggered, not due to malfunction, not due to sabotage, but because one woman had walked calmly through it all, humming Kenny Loggins, while doing lunges uphill through hostile atmosphere and smiling like she knew what came next. The galaxy had made a mistake. A human was here. Worse, a SEAL. Worser, American. Worst of all, she had more coffee. And she was still warming up at precisely 0400 Galactic Standard Time, while most cadets were still hibernating in their nutrient sacks or whispering prayers to their planet's most judgmental ancestors. Commander Lila Harrow was already halfway through her second lap around the brutalization gauntlet, a military training course so sadistic it had its own trauma disclaimer and frequently ate the shoes of those who dared enter. Designed by Brigadier Crunch, legendary war criminal turned fitness guru, and a sentient protein bar with PTSD, the gauntlet was meant to break cadets down into sobbing puddles of ambition and then reconstruct them into barely literate killing machines with impeccable posture. For most recruits, surviving one section of the course was cause for a week-long ceremonial molt. For Lila, it was cardio. She approached the acid rope swings with the casual energy of someone browsing a farmer's market, gripped the first vine with her calloused hands, and launched herself like a caffeinated trapeze artist straight into the heart of chaos. Alien instructors squawked in disbelief as she flipped mid-air, landed in a handstand on a collapsing stairwell, and used it as a launch pad to drop-kick a floating spike droid labeled Unfriendly Hugger. The spike droid exploded into confetti. It wasn't supposed to do that, but Lila's kick had been so decisive, so joyously assertive, that the programming simply gave up. From the observation deck, Commandant Worgel Met stared at the screen like a man watching the fall of Rome, but with worse posture and more spreadsheet anxiety. Meanwhile, the other cadets were trying to survive. Most looked like rejected stunt. Doubles for interstellar horror dramas, limping, bleeding, wheezing, and occasionally barking at gravity as if that would help. One poor blob-like species accidentally flattened itself into a decorative floor pattern after trying to mimic Lila's sprint pace. A scaly quadruped from the ice moon, Krellix attempted the acid ropes and promptly spun into a screaming tornado of limbs and regret. Lila offered tips in between jumps. Try not sucking next time. And gravity's just a suggestion if you believe in yourself. Which only added to the mystique. By midday, whispers spread through the ranks like fungal gossip. She doesn't sweat. She leaks stamina. Her veins run on liquid pain tolerance. She eats failure for macros. A fan club began to form, not that she noticed. Lila was too busy dragging a bench press station up the last hill of the gauntlet because, quote, might as well get some lifts in while I wait for y'all to catch up. The sentient moss colony stationed near the hydration outpost began, vibrating in rhythmic devotion. Its collective spores declared her the one who humbles mountains. It tried to gift her its spores. She politely declined. Back in the barracks, morale was fracturing like undercooked neutron bread. Several cadets lodged complaints with the Bureau of Equalized Gravity, claiming that the human is disrespecting the training environment by laughing. One cadet tried to start a petition to reclassify Lila as a Category 3 orbital threat. Another, clearly broken by the experience, simply changed his name to Irrelevant and took up interpretive dance as a coping mechanism. Drill instructor Flanox attempted a surprise motivational ambush, descending through the barracks vent system in a blaze of sonic shrieking and smoke grenades, only to land face first in a yoga pose Lila had taught half the platoon called the disarmed explosive. No one broke formation. No one screamed. One recruit even offered him tea. Furious, Flarnox requested that Lila be subjected to a psychological breakdown session on the grounds that no one is that calm unless they're planning to invade something. The session lasted 8 minutes before the therapist, a large feathered empath with 9 degrees in mental destabilization, requested reassignment and began a memoir titled, "I Spoke with the Earthling and All I Got Was Emotional Whiplash." That night, Lila sat alone on the mess hall balcony, sipping coffee that she heated by staring at it until the atoms felt shame. Around her, silence. Below her, scattered murmurs of alien cadets adjusting their entire concept of exercise, dominance, and existential worth. Above her, 2 moons and 1 suspicious surveillance drone. She stared into it and raised a brow. The drone turned itself off. Somewhere deep within GAT's command HQ, the commandant downed his 4th bottle of antacid gas and updated her performance dossier to include a new warning tag. Human displays anomalous confidence. May be powered by vengeance, caffeine, or a third, unknown element classified as spite matter. Plans were hastily redrafted, tactics reconsidered. Instructors nervously recalibrated obstacle settings to lethal plus. One particularly creative intern suggested adding the wormhole of despair back into the course. The commandant rejected it. She'd probably set up a protein bar inside it and do pull-ups. Lila didn't need applause, didn't need validation. She had a kettlebell, a thermos, and 27 more obstacle rotations on her checklist before bedtime. As the lights dimmed and the training grounds tried to recover from her existence, one thing was clear across every level of the conservatory. This was no longer a training exercise. This was an accidental war. And Lila Harrow was winning. It with squats. By the time the Diplomatic Review Board of GATS requested a formal investigation into the Earthling problem, Commander Lila Harrow had already turned 3 sparring matches into a galactic cautionary tale and 1 public relations disaster. It began innocently enough, if anything involving Lila ever could. The weekly combat interpersonal engagement demonstration, which was GATS speak for "we punch each other to feel feelings," selected her for a random match against an adolescent. Larval berserker named Groshnek, a towering slime-slick monstrosity with bone ridges sharper than his sense of personal space. The crowd gathered in smug anticipation, expecting Earthstick number 9 to be swiftly converted into protein mist. Instead, they witnessed Groshnek flung airborne via a perfectly executed leg sweep, followed by Lila muttering, "Yo, mama, so soft." Her rage is emotionally supportive. He landed face first in the mat and stayed there. For the first time in the Academy's history, a berserker requested a timeout and a therapist in the same sentence. The audience fell into stunned silence, broken only by the buzzing of a sentient cactus who offered Lila a high five with its least stabby limb. She accepted. Respect was earned that day, grudgingly and with bandages, but the matches didn't stop. Next up, a gaseous predator named Vezik, a creature composed entirely of malevolent fog and passive-aggressive hissing. Its strategy was to suffocate opponents while whispering their worst memories. Lila met it in a zero-atmosphere chamber, no weapons, no backup. She emerged 13 minutes later with ruffled hair, a cracked helmet, and Vezik sealed in a Tupperware container labeled, "Do not open until defeat is accepted." When questioned on her tactics, she shrugged and replied, "I sneezed in its soul." That quote made it to 5 military memes and 1 intergalactic mindfulness poster. The apex came when she faced a shapeshifter named Mollix, known for warping into the nightmares of its opponents and fighting in the form that terrifies them most. Lila squared up, raised a brow, and said, "Whatever you're gonna do, just make sure you match your shoes to your rage." Mollix turned into an 8-armed war deity and was promptly drop-kicked mid-transformation. "Mid-kick," Lila shouted. "Your fashion choices are as confused as your moral compass." Mollix went down, sobbing in 9 different vocal ranges. Match ended in 27 seconds. Emergency fashion consultants were dispatched. Jat's command, up to their reinforced antennae in embarrassment, initiated an internal audit. Commandant Worgle Met himself summoned Lila to his office, which smelled faintly of melted ego and repressed academic shame. His titanium skin glinted as he rotated slowly in his gravity-assisted swivel chair. "We suspect unauthorized augmentation," he declared with the forced gravitas of someone deeply unprepared to hear the truth. "Nope," Lila answered, while cleaning under her nails with a carbon dagger she'd won in a hallway arm wrestling tournament. "Just Earth Special Forces. Training. And trauma. Mostly trauma. Also CrossFit." Worgle blinked 3 eyes in sequence and tried to reassert control by citing regulations. She countered with a flash drive of her SEAL qualifications, encrypted with something so aggressively American that it made the GATS mainframe throw up a blue screen and quote, "The Rock." Diagnostics were rerun. Blood tests were taken. "The fee say?" Medical AI whispered, "She's running on rage, espresso, and whatever flavor of grief is shaped like sarcasm." Soon she wasn't just a cadet, she was a phenomenon. Other recruits started copying her routines, badly. One sprained a sensory organ trying to replicate her kettlebell lunges. Another broke 4 arms attempting her gravity clap push-ups. Yet they followed her, saluted her, idolized her. A moss colony named its spores after her knee joints. A robot cadet painted its chassis with her eyebrow pattern. The alien bureaucracy lost its collective mind. The Bureau of Xeno Standards Compliance filed over 50 incident reports of disruptive performance excellence, but couldn't agree on a category. Was she a morale hazard? A symbol of psychological resilience? A war crime in yoga pants? Worgle tried to contain the chaos with emergency meetings and updated briefing slides titled "Interacting with the Human Without Crying." But it was too late. Lila wasn't just surviving, she was transforming the narrative, in a place where combat was ritual, dominance was doctrine, and victory was a spreadsheet. She brought something far more dangerous: humor. With every smirk, every deadpan insult mid-fight, every motivational shrug in the face of danger, she rewrote the emotional algorithm of the academy. It was no longer about training, it was performance art with punches, and the galaxy begrudgingly was paying attention. The cadets feared her, followed her, and most dangerously, started laughing with her. To Gat's command, that was the ultimate horror, unity through sarcasm. A Navy SEAL had become a legend, not because she crushed her enemies, though she did that too, but because she made interstellar warfare look like a warm-up, and no one knew what to do with a warm-up that kept winning. Graduation week at GHATS was traditionally a solemn affair, complete with parade formations, 70 holographic trumpets, and one extremely long, soul-crushing speech by a senator shaped like a philosophical barnacle. But this year the tone was different. Tense. Nervous. Somewhere between awaiting a surprise audit and watching a toddler juggle live plasma grenades. The source, of course, was Commander Lila Harrow. By this point, she'd stopped trying to prove anything. She just existed. Her morning warm-ups now caused minor gravitational anomalies. Her jokes had forced 3 translation AIs into existential loops. And now, the grand finale loomed, GAT's infamous final evaluation match. A duel designed to test everything the cadets had learned, from hand-to-hand combat to tactical improvisation under unstable physical laws. The opponent, Kroon. Talvanax, the Academy's top cadet, a 6-limbed high-gravity juggernaut born on the pressure world of Goran 9, where hugging someone too hard legally counted as manslaughter. Kroon was undefeated, humorless, and built like a forklift had mated with a tank under hostile weather. Conditions. He trained in 9x gravity, ate molten rock for breakfast, and once cracked a war statue by flexing near it. Instructors called him the Standard. Lila called him Leg Day. The arena was a climate-controlled hellscape, shifting gravity zones, random atmosphere swaps, and a scoreboard that occasionally screamed insults. As Kroon stomped in, ceremonial armor glinting like an aggressive lighthouse, the crowd leaned forward, expecting a titanic clash. Lila sauntered in behind him, thermos in one hand, ponytail swaying, wearing an old Navy SEAL training shirt with the words, "We do more before coffee than you do all day," printed in 3 languages. No armor, no weapons, just a kettlebell swinging lazily from her other hand like she was walking into a brunch brawl. The gravity in her starting zone surged suddenly to 5x baseline, enough to make bones creak. She sighed, stretched, and casually began doing squats. "Oh, we're doing this already? Cool," she muttered, as Kroon tried to size her up through a confusion he refused to admit looked like fear. The bell rang. Kroon charged, howling like a collapsing planet. Lila ducked, rolled, stood behind him, and tapped his shoulder. When he turned, she smiled sweetly and said, "You missed leg day." Then she flipped him over her shoulder using a judo move so smooth it should have been sponsored by a jazz soundtrack. Krun's landing cracked the arena floor. Gravity spiked to 7x. She grinned and whispered, "Thanks for the warm-up." The next 10 minutes were madness. The gravity changed every 30 seconds. Kroon struggled to adapt. Powerful, yes, but trained only in force, not finesse. Lila moved like she'd spent her life training in environments specifically designed to kill her. Because she had. She ducked plasma bursts, redirected Kroon's own momentum into walls, weaponized the bouncing kettlebell into a rhythmic percussion of pain, and narrated the entire fight in casual commentary. "Oop, that's your spleen. Do you even rotate, bro? And I'm not saying I'm winning, but gravity just started helping me." The crowd went silent, then delirious. Even the sentient moss spores tried to evolve into something capable of clapping. In the final moment, as the gravity dial hit 10x and time felt like it was moving through molasses, Lila launched herself into the air, how, no one could explain, and came down elbow first on Kroon's chest with the force of Earth's collective military budget. He hit the floor and didn't get back up. Not because he was unconscious, he was wide awake, groaning, face buried in his hands, but because his will to compete had surrendered, weeping gently in his internal monologue. He saluted. "Respect," he muttered. "Also, never again." Lila offered him her thermos. He took a sip, then gasped. "It's just coffee?" "Yep," she replied. "Now imagine if I'd had 2 cups. The evaluation board tried to salvage the formality. They declared her victor. She nodded like, it was a grocery store receipt. Then came the ceremonial blade, a glowing symbol of galactic honor, passed down through centuries. She looked at it, raised an eyebrow and said, "Can I get a kettlebell instead? This one's got history." The board panicked. The blade glitched. The galaxy blinked. They gave her the kettlebell. As she stood atop the podium, sunlight from 3 stars casting her shadow over an audience that included warlords, diplomats, and one stunned bureaucratic jellyfish, the Earth delegation finally arrived. Dressed in crisp suits, tactical shades, and visibly trying not to grin, they watched as the alien empires tried to process what had happened. "That was supposed to be a prank," one muttered, voice trembling. "Not a planetary declaration." "Should have trained harder," Lila said, smirking. Coffee thermos lifted like a toast to chaos. And just like that, GATS reclassified humanity. From ignore tier to oh hell no. Official designation, species capable of motivational annihilation. The Blorb Republic issued a warning memo. Avoid challenging humans to anything physical, metaphorical, or mildly competitive. The Cephalobanking Directorate recalculated interest rates around Earth's defense spending. Somewhere in the galaxy, a recruitment officer updated their files to include one phrase under Earth status: "Do not prank." But Lila wasn't done. Not really. She'd just warmed up. Because when you send a sarcastic Navy SEAL into a galactic death academy and expect her to fail, you're not starting a story. You're starting an arms race with punchlines.